Our planet is experiencing an environmental crisis. In every part of the world, we are experiencing hotter temperatures. In Nigeria, we have seen extreme weather conditions. We are experiencing flooding and also drought. And this has negative impacts on our food production, which is majorly rain-fed. For a country like Nigeria with over 200 million people, a food crisis will plunge this nation and the entire West African region into further crisis, because the region is already threatened by unemployment, poverty, and terrorism. This documentary was based on the findings of young people, based on the findings of the perceptions of people about the realities of climate change. And this project this project forms the basis of our climate change statement, the basis of our climate change commitment, and our demands from local, national, and global policymakers, which will set the pace for climate change action in the coming years. During the time when we had that town hall meeting with stakeholders in the value chain, in the cassava value chain, we found out a lot of interesting things. Firstly, we were warmly received by the climate change desk officer of the Ministry of Agriculture in person of Mr. James Oyeshola, and then the stage was set for the meeting, and there were a lot of revelations that came in. The first thing that struck our minds was that climate change is really, really real. Even the farmers can attest to the fact that they might not know so much about it, but they're already experiencing it. Already they have a term for climate change, and they call it Oju Ojo Tiyato, and it means to them that, oh, something is different about the weather, something has changed about the weather.
We have several evidences of the adverse effects of climate change. Firstly, in my earlier days as a farmer, the rains come in trickles in the second month of the year, and by the third month, it will be suitable for planting, just enough for our operations. We do not know anything about irrigation because the rains come in the right proportions. However, these days, we see extreme weather conditions that have been doing more harm than good to our crops.
There's one foremost thing that I'm going to follow, is that prediction of weather. I will definitely follow it. Now I know that I don't have to waste chemical. There are times that I will just be like, let's go and spray, it's time to spray. We spray glyphosate and Primagens, only for rain to start. Like this cloud, this thing did not look like it was going to rain before now. But even we knew that there's a prediction, there's something that you can actually harness, and you know that when you know you don't spray that day, you just wait till another day, and we would have been able to use that instead of wasting our chemicals and wasting money. At least that one help us to know that yes, and now we know climate change is for real. Ourselves too, whatever we are doing to contribute to it, we'll minimize if we cannot stop it. Because obviously, most of these things is not something that we can stop immediately. But minimizing it with time, we start to look for alternatives. But if there is no alternative on the ground at that particular time, unless we want to lie to ourselves, we still keep using that old method. So we need alternative, which we are hoping they will profile to us.
One, you need to be proactive. You have to be so proactive, and one of the mitigative aspect or adaptive measure that we state is put in place that we give weekly weather predictions. You know, if the farmer knows when to plant, because climate change has changed the time to plant, time to harvest. Maybe you need to plant around March, it's now changing to June or July. It now became erratic. So if you know when rain will fall, then you can as well, that will minimize some kind of loss in terms of value addition. When the farmers say, okay, I need to apply maybe fertilizer, and there's going to be, it has been predicted there will be heavy rain. That rain will wash away the fertilizer. So now that will infer the farmers to know the cultural practice to practice at a point in time. And that will reduce the effect of the production I've just mentioned. You understand? So Ogun State will give weekly weather prediction to farmers on OGTV and on Saturday on Agbeha Fogoshoro or Agbelere on radio, Agbelere on TV every Saturday. Those are because we believe that the awareness to tell the farmers this is what you do, and through media can have a wide spread of information that the farmers can pick from. Apart from that, we also yearly, apart from the SRP, seasonal rainfall prediction that we attend with NEMIT to know, and we also downscale the NEMIT, particularly as it affects our people in Ogun State. We break it down. Like I said, in the way of weather prediction, we have we can predict up to 1,000 localities because of erratic nature. There can be rain here in Okemoson, and there is no rain at Kobakwe, which is a very short distance. It can be rain in Abeokuta and no rain in Ota. So you cannot generalize that there will not be rain in Ogun State. You have to be location specific.
The idea of cutting off trees, indiscriminate felling of trees, we are used to it most times as farmers. We want to process, fine, we are cassava farmers, but we have families too, our families with it. So if we want to process gas, we don't think of let's harness solar, let's use gas. Please, let's get this firewood and make this guy and raise this guy. So we have food to eat at least. We don't sell to them and then go ahead and buy it at high cost again. So we at least produce the one for us. And again, the idea of this synthetic fertilizer, we are so used to it. So I'm learning now that we can stop it. Maybe we can now incorporate our poultry excrete, all these organic waste, and pour it, then plow it into the land. That's an alternative.
I will have to thank the organizers of this event, most especially the Covenant University people that came to enlighten us, and the ministry that welcomed us. We are really very grateful, and I think this symposium we just finished, it will help us in our value food chains, and it will also guide us, and when planning for our various maybe in the next season when we want to maybe cultivate or grow our crops. So that is it.
Thank you so much. I'm Dr. Adigboye, this is Omo, Center Officer. We are here on the Youth Climate Change Action Program, and we'll have a session with you. We just have a little bit of things put together to be able to know your mind about climate change, and of course knowing that your input is so much valuable.
I believe climate change exists because it's happening here in Nigeria. We are seeing evidence of it in Taraba State, which we just recently had floodings in Adamawa, Jigawa, also in Bauchi State, which we had dangerous and deadly floodings, which took place as a result of over rain, too much rain, which recorded in those regions. So it exists and it's real.
I'm a polio survivor, and I had polio when I was 3+. I wasn't born with poliomyelitis, and it was quite difficult at the time. I was born in Kano State. Climate change typically is a change in the normal climate we have, which means it's either very hot very cold. And none is good for anyone, whether you live with a disability or not. So for me, when it's quite hot, it's not very easy because I would need to consume more fluid. And if you are consuming more fluid, personally, I'm sharing a personal experience here, and you have to use a restroom in a place where you are not even sure they have a restroom that's accessible for you as a person with disability, it becomes a trauma for you in my mind. It just makes, and then once the weather changes, like it's doing now, in my head I'm calculating, dear Lord, just hold it for me to get to my house. Because I have had times where I fall and sprained my ankle. But it's not just about me. It's about millions of other persons with disability who do not have this opportunity of engagement.
Yeah, actually it has a negative impact on me as a person living with disability. In the sense that, whenever I want to go out, for instance, and I look at the weather, I get scared that, we can't actually predict, the weather. And most times, based on experiences I've had, when it rained and I got caught up in the rain, I realized that my movement automatically is actually disrupted. So I find it difficult, or I struggle, to walk when it rains, for instance, especially when we're having flood in some areas here in Lagos State, you understand? And basically, it's affected my own productivity.
Production, I remember there's a time they said the sun was too much and then tomatoes are getting spoiled or rotting or something. So imagine things like that. How do we cope? So apart from being with disability, when people eat, so how do we go about it? How do we survive without getting the food and the farm produce that we ought to get when we have climate change and all that? So I think it affects food security also.
We are here in Ota, and we are in the King's Palace, Olota of Ota. We are here to meet with youths regarding the Nigerian Youths Unite for the climate change action in connection with the 16th United Nations Conference for Youth. And we're here to interview the youths today who have minimal education, who are unemployed, and we want to know what they think about climate change, the extent to which they know, how it affects their life, how it affects food consumption, the weather, and we want to know what they feel.
The way I feel about the weather is unpleasant. The sun is not shining as much, yet it is harsh to the skin. The intensity of rain is abnormal and insufficient.
What I think can be done to stem the tide is for us to engage in advocacy. We need to caution those who are fond of dumping refuse inside water channels. The truth is, the government cannot do everything. They can only do so much. The change should begin with us.
When we are talking about the high rise in food prices, we should start the change with ourselves. Let us go back to the farms. Let us take a cue from the days of our fathers and see how they enjoy longevity. Then compare it to what we have today. Most of the things we consume today as food are mostly processed food and not natural. In those days of our fathers, they rather eat fresh fish instead of canned, processed ones that we eat today. The climate is unstable these days.
With climate, you have seasons and you have certain weather patterns with each season. But then I think it has changed now. Before, we didn't used to have rain in January. January is Harmattan season. You just have the fog and then the cool weather and then maybe some heat. But I'm sure last year, even this year, we've had rain in January and. So that's a change. In fact, sometime this January, there was a time that you could have like 3 different weathers in a day, okay? Rain, heat, and then the fog, and all of that. So I believe that climate change is happening. There's a lot of flooding, maybe more storms and all of that.
Yes, I believe climate change exists. So climate change is not a sudden thing. There is a difference between climate and weather. So climate change does exist.
Well, for my own discipline, I've come to understand that climate change is seen in the social life. It has affected the social life. It has affected cost insecurity in the society. It has affected the health sector. The lives of people are at the brink of death because of climate change, and most importantly, it has affected the livelihood of people across Nigeria. Yes, so socially, people are forced to migrate from their ancestral lands where they previously know or grew up in. They are forced to move from that location, migrating to the other, and this causes cultural shock for the host communities, and it causes feelings of unacceptance from the host communities to the migrating communities. And if the host is not willing to open up to the migrating community, it causes land conflicts. There's conflict in land, there's conflict for resources. Yes, socially, when people migrate or when population increases, it leads to the fight for mineral resources. It has led to high rate of crime because of the rise in prices of food and basic amenities. Things are very expensive now. Food is very expensive. It led to poverty, and the social environment led to poverty.
This change has come, and it will definitely have an effect on how farming is done and everything like that. And well, farmers would need to embrace this change and then start to make adjustments, necessary adjustments. I don't know, I'm thinking that there are a lot of people trying to propose solutions to, what can be done, okay, to help, farming so that farmers can farm, in ways that will be more productive now that we have the climate change. And that, of course, brings about, the change that we are talking about. So maybe this is how they've been doing this. Now they would have to do it in a different way. They may need to learn new ways of farming. They may need to learn, how to use certain equipment, and all of that. So farmers will need to be open-minded now to embrace this change, that has come.
The things the farmers can do, actually want to practice vertical farming. They can collect rain through the roofs of the houses. Most of them live beside the farm. They can collect rain the way you direct or channel the rain from the roof to a drum. So you use that particular water to water the farm and stuff like that.
Health-wise, people are experiencing skin reactions and changes in their body temperature. Common cold is becoming more prevalent than before. The high rate of mortality in Nigeria. The best way to adapt to our is to work on our population rise. Rise in population is affecting our society in many ways than one. I mean, Nigeria's population is over 200 million, especially in the west and also in the north. Climate change is higher in those locations compared to the east or to the south. So I believe that if population is being controlled, it can go a long way. That way, basic amenities will be accessible by many people, and then yes, and then for host communities accepting immigrants, if they could be an understanding and acceptance. If the host community could be able to be empathic about the situation of the migrating community, it can go a long way to solve the issue of climate change, the effect of climate change.
Creative thinking is important for problem solving, because now the change brings about some kind of problem, and they will need to solve that problem. So they have to start thinking creatively. In short, they should just be, I think it's a time for them to task their mind, become, more broaden their horizon, look out, for things that they can do to, we're not saying they should stop farming. How can they farm better? And of course, the spiritual aspect is always there. We can't, if you're a spiritual person, of course, you also, look to God for hope, and He's the giver of wisdom, so He can give them wisdom, to do the things that are necessary for them.
I am very, very optimistic. That's the reason why I studied the way I studied. That's the reason why I'm here in Covenant University. I am really optimistic. That's the reason why I'm driven by ideas and concepts. That's the reason why I'm part of this organization. I'm very optimistic about the future. And I believe if everyone could be more empathic about the other person, then it can really cause a social revolution. New social values need to be created. New social norms need to be created for these problems to be solved.
Okay, so we expect to see that our local authorities would set up a task force on climate change, and that task force should include representatives from the local community, representatives from the local authority, university representatives, and youth representatives. We also demand that our state government begin to implement universal design in all their infrastructural projects moving forward, and this would reduce the effect of climate change, particularly flooding, on citizens with disabilities. Also, we want to see that we also demand that our state government starts to establish climate smart demonstration farms, and these farms should use renewable energy to ensure that there is enough food for people, at the same time create green jobs and also reduce carbon emissions. We also demand that our national government make life more habitable for people, because people will only commit to climate change action if their basic needs are met. Just like a simple example that we found while we were on site in the field, farmers had been told by the extension workers that the firewood they use is harmful to their health and also generates greenhouse gases. And those farmers, they really welcomed the idea, and they started using gas to process their cassava. But in the course of time, we have seen that the cost of gas has increased exponentially, and now the people have gone back to their firewood because they cannot afford gas. So the government has a lot of role to play in making life, providing the basic amenities, the basic infrastructure. And when this infrastructure is in place, it will be easier for people to embrace and support the climate change action. And then our other policymakers, from the world leaders, we want international donors and world leaders to monitor the climate change projects, monitor monies that have been disbursed to our national government, so that we are sure that monies that are voted for climate change is being used for what it is used for. We also demand that research institutions and universities have direct access to climate change finance so that they can carry out climate change related projects. And then we are also asking that the criteria for assessing climate finance become less stringent.